wish you much luck, happiness, and good health. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know some other board members have some words that they would like to say as well.
Through the chair, thank you. Titled it Farewell to a Respected Friend and Colleague. Cindy, I had the pleasure of first meeting you when I campaigned unsuccessfully against you in 2017. My immediate impression of you then until now has remained unchanged. You are a brilliant, kind-hearted, competitive, driven, well-spoken, well-written, objective, and compassionate woman who has served our community honorably. I consider myself fortunate to have sat next to and have served with you on this board, learning from you each step of the way. Your unparalleled depth of experience and knowledge from years spent within the educational field will be sorely missed. Please take solace in knowing that I, along with countless others, have learned from you. Personally, I have the utmost respect for any person who serves this position to such great capacity, yet knows when it is time to step away to be with family in a time of need. Thank you for your service, Cindy. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for all you have done for our children, our teachers, our administrators, and our community. My thoughts, prayers, and strength will be with you and your family always. Godspeed, Miss Eastman.
Thank you.
I know Miss, is that working? I know Miss Lawton has some. Miss Lawton?
Sorry, I wish I could be there in person for your meeting tonight, but I did want to just let you know, before I got to know you personally, I always admired how you use your platform within the Board of Ed to speak from a place of thoughtfulness, informed decision making, and when you did speak, it was to convey a message, and it was articulate, respectful, and impactful. As I got to know you through the election process, it was clear that you are somebody that exemplifies passion and service, despite it sometimes being uncomfortable. You've cared deeply enough for the students, the community, and the integrity of our school system to continue to volunteer your time and effort, and you never wavered in your beliefs. You also helped gently ease me into this learning curve over the last several months, and I was excited to sit alongside you. Although our time together here was brief, I am appreciative of the time over the years that you spent for our students, and also for the example of character that you set forth, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Miss Lawton. Any other board members? Oh,
I just want to say, while I've not had the opportunity to work with Cindy very long on the Board of Ed, I can truly say that I greatly admire her passion and authenticity. She is true to beliefs and always stays the course. I can only say that I wish you well in your future endeavors, Cindy, and I wish you the best for you and your family.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Cavallis?
Cindy, I've only had the privilege of working with you since November, and I've been told that you have been a valued member of this board. And I certainly wish you all the best in any of your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Miss Eastman, for 11 years I called you neighbor. And then 4 years ago I got to call you board member. And you exemplify a public servant. You give the whole of your effort, despite not having children in our schools. You're here because you care. And that's all that the community can ask. And so, again, as Ms. Rinaldi said, there may have been times we may have disagreed on our positions, but you always came with thoughtful, clear ideas and positions, and your knowledge is irreplaceable. And so we want to thank you for giving the whole of yourself to us and to this community, and wish you and your family the very best.
Thank you.
All right, and that just leaves me. Well, Miss Cindy Eastman, it has been an absolute learning opportunity for me to see you and see you be active on this Board of Education, and I want to thank you for the biggest heart that you give to all of our families and to all of our students. With your education background, you always gave that perspective, so thank you. And so also as a token of appreciation and as something to honor your time with the Board of Education on behalf of all of us. There we go.
You want to come up?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
We'd like to present you with a plaque.
What an appreciation award. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh. Sorry.
we could go right here.
It's up to you,
Why don't we
wherever
put
you
you
want,
right in the
Cindy.
middle, Cindy?
I'm okay right here.
Oh.
Yeah?
Or-
Okay, she wants right here, come on guys. Wherever you want.
Would be easier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Can I just say,
Yes,
I'm
you may.
overwhelmed. I'm gonna go, but I'm overwhelmed, and I can't even find words right now to thank you all for your comments and your support, and for supporting me in this decision. And I will miss all of you, working with all of you, and but please know that I will always be an ally of this board and our students and our parents and our teachers and administrators. And it's been my honor to work towards our goals together. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. I'm just gonna read a little something. Okay. With the resignation of board member Cindy Eastman, a seat on the board is available. Anyone interested in being appointed to the Board of Education can email me, Kathy Rinaldi, and please include a description of your qualifications as well as your desire to serve on the board. Please note that you must be a registered Democrat, independent, or unaffiliated voter to qualify. Registered Republicans are not eligible. It is the board's objective to make an appointment at the next regularly scheduled meeting. However, we do retain the option to schedule a special meeting if appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next two recognitions are for two retirees from the district, and I do see one of our retirees here, and the other I don't at the moment. So I'm going to start with recognizing Miss Cynthia Romano, who has been a dedicated and loyal employee serving the students and staff in our district for the past 35 years. Ms. Romano served as a library media clerk in several of our schools throughout the district, with her longest tenure being at Swift Middle School. And Ms. Romano played an important role in the daily operations of our school libraries. From processing resources to checking out library books to replenishing supplies, Ms. Romano always helped anyone who entered the library. She always greeted everyone with a smile, helping students find materials or books they needed and managing the day-to-day operations. Ms. Romano has always been accommodating and helpful to all, and she has touched the lives of thousands of children and has always promoted reading literacy in all grades. After her many years of dedicated service, Ms. Romano is now retiring, and we wish her many years of health and happiness with her family. And we have a certificate and a small clock for her, and I think we'll hand it off to Ms. Lurs, and I'm sure she can get it over to Ms. Romano. All right, our next person, I see in the back over there, and I know he brought his wife too. We would like to recognize Mr. Jeff Hughes tonight for 28 years of service to our district. Jeff began in Watertown in 1994 as a custodian and later took on the roles of courier and maintenance. We saw Jeff every day in central office. His commitment to the community and the district, especially over these years, is phenomenal. Jeff is dependable and efficient. He has established and maintained effective working relationships with central office and administrators and with the Board of Education, making frequent deliveries to their homes over the years, delivery packets in a timely manner. So thank you, Jeff. And we will miss having Jeff around. His good mood and delightful cheer were always contagious. Good luck to you as you embark on this new chapter in your life. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind coming up, we can hand you your certificate.
Thank you.
Thank you for your deliveries every Friday.
I know.
Could we take a
You have to
picture?
walk up my
You know
walkway
where
anymore.
you know where we all live. Could we take a picture with you? Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
We'll go around
Yeah.
front.
Go right around.
Behind the.
Yes. Thank you, so appreciate it.
Thank you so
So we knew when Jeff was coming into the office, because he opened the door with, "Attention, everyone." Come closer, you better go there.
Good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you.
Evan, you've been waiting so patiently over there tonight. Okay, now our report from Student Council Representative Evan Davidson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. At John Trumbull Primary School, we celebrated the 100th day of school. This is a fun-filled day with all students counting to 100 and completing activities related to the number 100. Some classes even dressed as if they were 100 years old. Kindergarten students counted out 100 items, and first grade classes decorated clothing with 100 items on it. Many of these classes held a virtual fashion show where students walked a runway in their classrooms to show off their 100th day clothing. At Judson, we will begin our iReady assessments tomorrow, Tuesday, February 15th. We are excited to see the growth of all of our students. Teachers will spend professional learning community time in the coming weeks to analyze the data, reflect on and plan instructional strategies, as well as create our win groups for the third rotation. We had so much fun celebrating the 100 days of learning. There were lots of 100-year-old staff members and students dressed up for the special day. Fun has been had by all while learning about the different types of events seen in the Winter Olympics on the morning announcements. Our student council has also been tracking the medal count. Go Team USA! Judson's staff and students had a blast playing in the snow on February 1st. The day was beautiful, and it was so great to see everyone having so much fun. Finally, we are so excited to welcome back Nurse Karen Albino to Judson. We are so fortunate to have her back on our team. At Polk, our PTO is super excited to share that we're hosting a fun run event to help us raise money to enhance the Polk playground by adding a swing set. Our event will take place from March 1st through March 9th, with the actual fun run taking place on March 10th. Over the course of the event, students will travel the world and meet 5 real kid athletes who play with character. Through mini documentaries, students will learn about how to play with curiosity, confidence, humility, practice, and endurance, all while solving a real mystery and having fun. Over the last 2 weeks, the Polk Student Council challenged students to bring in non-perishable items for donation to the Watertown Food Bank. With the grade level pajama day on the line, the students took the challenge and donations poured in. A healthy competition ensued, and the 4th graders emerged as victors, with 3rd and 5th grades both doing an amazing job to support this cause. Beginning on February 14th and running through the 25th, all Polk students will take the iReady Winter Diagnostics for both English Language Arts and Math. The diagnostic assessment, given twice per year, helps us monitor our students' progress towards mastering grade level standards. Students will engage in goal-setting conferences with their teachers based on their performance, reviewing the growth they made since the fall and setting goals for the remainder of the school year. In addition, teachers will review these goals and students' performance data with families at conferences in March. This past Friday, Polk students and staff, along with all Watertown schools, hosted a Readout Day in support of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. This event was put together by WHS student Casey O'Toole. Polk School was thrilled to lend their support to this incredible cause. In technology education at Swift, 3D design and printing and additive manufacturing is just one of the many hands-on opportunities our students in grades 7 and 8 have the opportunity to explore. During the 3-week unit, students are introduced to the world of engineering and the engineering design process. Each student participates in lessons on the use of a 3D design application and the 3D printers. This unique program allows students the opportunity to design an object and then hold it in their hands. Students explore the practical applications of this emerging technology and how additive manufacturing is impacting the world around us. Animoto, CapCut, and Biteable are just 3 programs accessible online that 6th grade students recently used in their book trailer project. Students had to create a book trailer for their January independent reading book that attempted to convince an audience to want to read the book. The book trailer had to include key elements of the text through live action, photography, video, illustration, and/or animation. The goal of the trailer was to reveal enough information about the book to make it interesting while catching the audience's attention through the use of technology. Approximately 60 randomly selected 8th graders recently took part in a national testing protocol as part of the National Assessment of Educational Progress Initiative, or NAEP testing. This testing measures knowledge in math, language arts, and U.S. history and civics. The results, also called the nation's report card, are used to inform legislators and policymakers across the country in making educational decisions. This week, teachers and students met together for another SSP lesson. These lessons, designed by support staff, are part of the social emotional initiatives put into place this year. This particular lesson, called Emotions Matter, focused on tying together emotions and actions. Students were asked to identify common emotions that might occur at significant times in the day, and then to predict how a specific emotion might influence how they act. Students met in small groups for these sessions. Watertown High School congratulates seniors Keith Acuna and Jillian Verano on being named the 2022 Connecticut Association of Schools Arts Awards winners for the performing and visual arts. Keith and Jillian will be honored at a banquet at the AquaTurf in April for their artistic excellence. Watertown High School held out a Red Out Day on February 11th to raise funds for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's fight against blood-related cancers. Many staff members and students participate to donate to this worthy cause. Watertown High School student theater members are hard at work preparing this year's musical, Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia will be performed in the Watertown High School auditorium over 2 weekends, Friday, March 18th through Sunday the 20th, and then on March 24th through the 26th. We look forward to enjoying the music of the 70s supergroup ABBA. Tickets are available at the Watertown Park and Rec office at the door. Our Unified basketball team is in action tonight against the Waterbury Career Academy Unified team at halftime of the boys basketball game. We thank our boys and girls basketball programs for their support of our Unified team during this winter athletic season. Last week was National School Counseling Week, and we thank our Watertown High School counselors for their support of our students throughout their journey through high school. And grade 12 students are hard at work on their capstone projects, and they are preparing for capstone presentation time, where they showcase their work to teachers and peers. We are excited to see students work around their areas of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Villanueva for her, Dr. Villanueva, I'm sorry, for your superintendent's report.
You got it. All right. So there's really just one big pressing update that I wanted to provide everybody with my report this evening, and that is ultimately Governor Lamont's recommendation as of early last week.
You want a drum roll or?
Oh, there we go. So to summarize, Governor Lamont has recommended that we move to optional masking after February 28th. And tonight they are officially, they being the Senate, voting on bill number 5047. And after they are complete with that vote, we will then find out what ultimately the results are. For all intents and purposes, I am hearing and talking to many people with the fact that most likely after the 28th, masking will become optional from all parties around. I don't think our district is in much of a different place, and as you know, in the summer, when we put out our reopening plan draft, we had already at that time put it optional inside of our report, and then obviously things changed, so it seems that there is just a natural response to go back to what we had originally indicated in the summer, to go to optional masking after February 28th. That is the kind of mix-up date, though, because we know that the executive orders were coming to an end February 15th, and so a lot of people had that date in their mind, but the recommendation takes that till February 28th, so the optional would happen just after that.
Through the chair. Dr. Villanueva, thank you for that update. It's kind of like the end of the tunnel. And just to clarify, from my understanding, basically the governor is turning oversight responsibility to the Department of Public Health and the Department of Education. But in trading conversations with our state senator, Eric Berthel, there appear to be no indications that they have any plans of not moving forward with the February 28th date, as always. And just a reminder to the public that we as the Board of Education are agents of the state. As much as people don't like it, we have to follow the rules. We will continue to do so, and we will keep you updated as we hear from our elected officials in Hartford, and this board will act accordingly.
You got it. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
McCluskey. Anybody else?
Through the chair. I had a question asked of me. School transportation, is that considered a school piece or is it considered public transportation?
So that is the one piece that's up in the air at the moment, because right now transportation is falling under a federal mask guideline. However, I think after tonight we will be able to determine if that is going to adjust. I don't want to speak out of line, but you know, if it's going to be optional in schools, I know that the conversations are already being had to then fall over into transportation as well. I think it's just a matter of how the pegs fall at this point.
Question through the chair. I just want to be clear. So are we saying that 2/28 is the date that we're going mask optional? Are we making that decision now based on what we're finding out tonight?
So we can't make the decision today because they're ultimately still voting this evening. But once we hear the results of tonight's vote, there shouldn't be anything that would stop school districts from going optional after the 28th if the voting goes as planned.
So to clarify, if they lift the mandate, we will be mask optional.
Thank you.
Correct.
As of the 1st.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so moving on to presentation, Watertown High School Program of Studies.
All right.
Dr. Carlato, and we'll present the recommended 2022-2023 Watertown High School Program of Studies.
Thank you.
I'll also have Mr. Holding and Mrs. Cody, assistant principals up here.
Great.
Good evening.
Thank you. And Mr. Dalton's just going to get your presentation up on the screen there for you.
Thank you. While he's doing that, I can just slide one and say good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to present this upcoming year's program of studies. The purpose of the presentation is to discuss the goals for the program of studies, to talk about additions for the upcoming year, talking about some highlights from this school year that we're currently in, and then providing some information from state legislation as well as from our work at the high school. I have copies for the board if,
They're in ours. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I probably have enough copies for the audience if I really need it.
Can you pull it up? Yeah, can we?
See if we can share.
I think she's could share it.
There we go.
Okay.
See if the thing works. There we go. Thank you. So our second slide is the vision of a graduate, and the vision of a graduate serves as an important anchor for our decision making, not only with the program of studies, but in all the programmatic decisions we make in school. As you know, the vision of a graduate contains the knowledge, skills, and characteristics that we build within and with students across their school experience. show you the cover of the program of studies, because it is always a collaborative student effort. So this was a lovely collaboration between a photography 2 student who actually built that pencil matrix thing in the middle. And he took that photograph as part of one of his projects. And then one of the graphics 3 students put that photograph into the cover as you see it there. And designed the font and designed where the year is placed. So a shout out to Eliana and to Brendan for their help with that cover program of studies.
Good evening, everyone. For the program of studies 22-23, we have 3 major goals. The first one is to develop and continue strong core curriculum requirements that appear in most high schools in the country. Also, to address legislative mandates, which I will explain further on the next slide, and provide interesting and varied elective courses. All of these factors are important considerations as we prioritize providing real-world, engaging, and authentic learning experiences for our students. Regarding the legislative mandates, Connecticut General Statute 10-221A, high school reform legislation, increases the minimum credit requirement for Connecticut high school students. Beginning with the class of 2023, students must earn 25 credits to earn a high school diploma versus 21 credits in the previous legislation. Middle school students who take high school courses in middle school, for example, Algebra 1, Spanish 1, and French, earn high school credit for those courses taken in middle school. That's okay.
Excuse me, can I ask one quick question on that? It's just like an elective credit though, right? It's not a Spanish credit or correct?
I believe so.
No, now it comes with the.
Oh, it does, okay. And algebra and French
Yes.
too? Oh, okay, cause
Yeah.
before it wasn't, right?
No, that was the, 10-221A made that change so that there was consistent practice across all the districts
Okay,
in the state. Yep.
perfect, thank you.
That's not working at all, Mr. Dalton, so sorry.
Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so the next slide also talks more about the important legislation and the program of studies impact. Over the last number of years, we have been preparing for the credit increase while building our programming to include a variety of experiences for our students. So since 2015, there we are, students had to fulfill 22 credits for graduation, and then all the way up to the year 2020 and above, we have the 26 required credits, 1 credit above the state mandate. In the time frame, we have continued to build our programming where required credits have increased, but unfortunately, we've lost a number of teaching positions while attempting to do this. There we are.
Good evening, everyone. So our budget proposal was to restore a science and a career and technical education teacher. A restored science teacher will allow us to reduce class sizes, specifically for our integrated science courses, which is our 9th grade science that all students take coming up from middle school. And also allow us to expand our other science choices. Our science electives later on in their high school career. So geology, forensic science, meteorology, marine biology, ecology, AP, environmental science, astronomy, and horticulture. For career and technical education, those are some of our most popular electives where we get our largest number of student requests. So therefore we can accommodate those requests with another CTE teacher. Also allow us to expand our manufacturing offerings and our engineering offerings to those students who are interested in those fields.
Through the chair.
Mhm.
Mr. Hogroof, you touched on a really important topic, was class sizes. Can you expand a little bit on what the administration is seeing as far as class sizes in the sciences to justify, you know, saying keep
Yes.
class sizes down.
Yep. So, in terms of integrated science, everyone has to take it, every ninth
Right.
grader that comes into the building. So we have to meet, all those requests, of the freshmen, that have requested that course. You can't put 30 in a classroom.
Right.
By law, it's 24 or less. The maximum you can accommodate is 24, in science. That's just due to the labs.
Yep.
And that is, like I said, is law. In terms of that, also, you know, those, to fill that need, you have to give up something on the other end. So that's where, in terms of our electives, we may not be able to run certain electives.
So we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
In essence.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So this year for that, we had to close down a couple forensic science classes, sections to accommodate in another integrated science section for ninth graders.
And I'm sorry. So the forensic sciences, roughly how many students do you see that are interested in that type of class?
Forensics?
Yeah. By the way, it was one of my favorites in college, so it's a loaded question.
I think there were 6 sections this year.
Wow.
That we could have ran, but we couldn't because we had to accommodate the integrated. So I think we're running 3 or 4 right now off the top of my head.
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me.
I'll just add, while they're putting the slide up again, that, just to reiterate, these are restored positions, so we're not asking for new, we're
Right.
asking for things that were caught previously.
Yep.
That are needed.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Dalton, can you pin my screen, please? Okay, or you can leave it at that. Thank you.
So as the new legislation has come down, beginning with the class of 2023, you can see the state guidance in terms of how the 25 credits are broken up, with 9 in humanities, 9 in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, 1 PE, 1 health, 1 world language, 1 mastery-based assessment, 2 electives. You can see on the left how we break down our 26 credits that are required for Watertown High School diploma for graduation. 4 credits of English, 4 of math, 3.5 of social studies, 3 science, 2 world language, 1 PE, 1 health, half credit personal finance, 6 electives, so your arts, your CTEs, your music, those courses, and then we have our capstone, which I'll speak a little bit more about in a second. So a few of the departments in the program of studies have put a nice little flow chart in there for students. So this is tough to see, but you can see it in your packets. So it's sort of a, start here. If you're really interested in art, you just want to try it out, what path you want to take to get sort of those lower level arts. If you're not really into art, but you want to try it out, we have art appreciation, art foundations, but then our foundations is one that sort of opens you up to the rest of the arts that you can take throughout your high school career. Math and English also have something very similar to that in the program of studies.
You can also see on the right-hand side our lovely student work. There it is. And we offer drawing, photography, you'll see in the program of studies. Last year's new course, typography, where students learn to use various fonts. And so those are some of the examples of their work. We wanted to highlight something very important from this year in terms of where we stand. And so we've had some national recognition from the College Board. The College Board is a national organization that administers the PSAT and SAT tests as well as advanced placement. So previously we reported to the board that we had a semifinalist, and so Olivia Eshu has now moved up to a finalist. And so that's the top 1% of all PSAT test takers nationwide. So that's an unbelievable accomplishment for a high school, and it's fabulous. We're so proud of Olivia and how she's achieved that. Also this year, we've had 2 national letters of commendation, and those are the top 3% of all PSAT takers nationwide. And we also had an award for AP Computer Science Female Diversity in Computer Science Principles. So we had a high percentage of female students who were taking AP Computer Science. So those are wonderful national recognitions for our school. Here are some pictures of students serving both the school and their community. So on the left-hand side are students who created Valentines for local veterans. In the middle are students of the service club creating care packages for people experiencing homelessness. And on the right-hand side are members of the Principals Advisory Council. So we have 60 members now. That's open to anyone in the school, and they provide me with advice and ideas about things that are occurring in our school. They're also learning about our 21 powerful instructional practices that the teachers are learning about, and they're also working with the vision of a graduate. So it's a very helpful body for our school, and their insights are very important to us. The next section of slides will deal with course additions, so things that we're actually adding to the program of studies, and we'll begin with Mr. Hooker.
So a few of our course offerings that we've added for the 2022-2023 program of studies is our unified class offerings. So next year we plan to offer unified woods, unified video production, unified foods, science essentials, unified music, and unified sports. So this is a great opportunity for students with and without disabilities to interact with one another, as well as the staff, to learn course content, and to work on course projects together. Teachers are extremely excited about this for next year. It's kind of getting out to the kids as well. They're very excited about it as well. As you know, our unified team is playing at halftime tonight as well against Career. So it's a great opportunity
Let's go to Chop Chop.
for everyone in the high school community.
I just want to say a quick word about the little graduation caps you see there. So we've taken each piece of a vision of a graduate and created a little P. So for when we expand this course offering, it really hits upon the E, which is for empathy, and the CP, which is communicate productively. So we're aligning the vision of a graduate with the expanded offerings in the program of studies. And eventually we'll have teachers add it onto their assignments so that students become increasingly aware of those. The next course is the African American, Black, and Puerto Rican Latinx Studies. That is in the Social Studies Department for elective credit. It is open to grades 11 and 12, and it's at the CP level. So you can read the slide about the purpose of the course, how students will explore accomplishments and struggles, intersections, perspectives, and collaborations of African American, Black, and Puerto Rican Latinx people.
Dr.
So-
Perlett, oh, sorry,
Oh,
I had a
ahead.
question with the title. Why are we not calling it Latin American instead of Latinx? Because we have African American, Black, and Puerto Rican. How come it's not Latin American?
So I can give you 2 reasons for that. One is that when we received the kind of the course skeleton from the state, they didn't call it Latin American, because Latin American only really focuses upon South America. Is Latin America Central America? What about Spain? So Latin America is not broad enough. So Latinx is all the people of Latin countries. But it's in the state's skeleton, they didn't provide it as Latin American.
Because when I looked it up, that's not, I did actually research it a little bit, and that's not what I found. It for Latin America, that's, for Latinx, it mentioned something about non-binary.
As in terms of why it's Latinx.
Yeah, instead of Latin American.
So if, I guess the choices would be not Latin American, it might be Latino/A. So in conversations with our world language department, where we have Latino and Latina teachers, their explanation to me was that Latinx is the most inclusive. secondarily to that, you can say Latino/O/A. But it wouldn't be Latin American as a place. To talk about the people, it's either Latinx or Latino, Latina.
Okay, we need to look into that a little bit more. Okay.
So, the, let's see, where was I here? So along with this course being an important elective in our program of studies, under the social studies department, it also allows us to meet the state requirement, for this elective to be placed in programs of studies throughout the state. And that had to have taken effect for the 22-23 school year. So that's where we are with that.
Question to the chair?
Yes.
Excuse me, Dr. Parlato?
Yes.
In line with this slide, I just wanted to ask, so Brandy Emmons had made a sizable donation in 2021 to the Institute for American Indian Studies, and this was to aid in the formation of curriculum for Watertown Public Schools. And Watertown Public School was to work with the Institute to build such a curriculum. Where are we exactly in the process in building a curriculum for the Native American Studies?
So I don't know if you're referring specifically as well to the legislation around Native American studies?
Yes and no, because this was discussed when the mascot was voted out with the last board, that we're gonna bring in some education and curriculum, so, and I know this donation was particular to help the Watertown High School community, so
Right.
That's where we're asking.
Right. Dr.
Where
Parlato,
are we with that?
if you don't mind, so in specific to Ms. Emmons's donation, I'll turn it over to Ms. Feckety, who can speak to the steps that we've already taken, and then the
great.
steps that are on the way. Thank you.
You want to now?
Sure.
So in summer of last year, we got started by going through and kind of finding all of the natural intersect points.
Okay.
Where our existing curriculum fit in with some of the pieces that were the recommendations from the mascot committee.
Great.
We did have the people from the American Institute out, they presented to us. We talked a little bit to the high school and middle school folks, and they felt that some of the programming might be better suited for different age levels, and we were looking for some of their specific programs and where they fit in with our curriculum.
Okay.
So, more to come. Summer curriculum writing typically happens over the summer, so we're hoping to expand on the work that we've done so far.
Okay.
And this is a separate initiative than the Latinx.
That's okay, it just was in line with diversity and
You got it,
all that,
yep.
so that's why it caught my eye. So do we have any idea when we plan on bringing this, or is it just to the students?
Yes, well, what we did was we have assured experiences that are happening this year.
Okay.
Through middle school and high school, based upon the recommendations and based upon the scope and sequence work that was done in the summer. As far as connecting to the Institute, not yet. We have not yet planned those trips.
The Institute was also virtual for some time.
Yes,
and
that I can know.
Yep, and
I was just questioning the timeline of it all.
Sure.
I know things take time, especially in developing a curriculum, and I know it's been out there for a little while, that's what I was just curious about, if we had a more definitive timeline.
So far, that's all that we've accomplished to date, is making a scope and sequence and finding the intersect points, and we did have several meetings with the Institute.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs.
You're
Beckett, I
welcome.
appreciate it, thank you.
From a legislative standpoint to your question, this African American and Latinx studies was specifically stated in the legislation as to be an elective course.
Sure.
Beginning July 1st, 2023, the Native American topics and ideas to be infused across the curriculum, not as a separate elective. So
Thank
that's, yeah, 7/1/23.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parlato.
You're welcome. Another addition.
Our next course is Algebra 2 Concepts, which is one CP math credit, and it's open to those students who have completed geometries. It's fully a course where students will reinforce their knowledge of algebra concepts from previous years, and students will be given the opportunity to demonstrate their mathematical knowledge through modeling and applying it to real-world situations. Technology will be integrated into the course as well, using the TI calculator to help students deepen their understanding and knowledge and allow further exploration of topics throughout the course.
Next edition is personal interest projects. That is open to students in grades 9 through 12. It is a half CP elective credit. What this course does is allow students to explore an area of interest. They create a project using a structured project platform. Luckily, we get to partner with our Regional Educational Service Center, which is EdAdvance, because they're the ones who host that platform under which students create their projects, and they also provide project coaching for the teacher and for the students. And then eventually students display and exhibit their work at the end of the semester. One very positive thing about the computer platform is that it encourages students to make career connections to their project. So if your area of exploration is something that you're really passionate about, how is it eventually connected to careers? Also, how is it eventually connected to the vision of a graduate? So those two things are happening at the same time. And it's actually very explicit. So like we have the little graduation caps for, in this case, for curiosity, then when they're doing that project, those very topics and those very characteristics will be very clear for the students as they're going through each stage of the project development. So that's kind of one of the ways that high schools are headed in terms of students exploring passion topics and areas of interest, and then exhibiting their work eventually, but always making that career connection.
Dr. Perlow, can I ask a question about that? Who teaches, like, who will teach that class? Like, what teacher will?
So we still have to figure out where it's gonna fit in the grand scheme of things, based upon who signs up, how many sections are needed, all those things we have to take a look at.
Okay.
So we'll fit it in where we can. Because it's a general elective credit though, it's not necessarily tied to the person's certification. So let's say a social studies teacher has it, because it's general elective, the student's topic doesn't have to be social studies.
Right.
Yeah.
Another addition to the 22-23 program of studies is the seal of biliteracy. Affixed on the high school diploma and transcript, this seal provides immediate recognition of a critical 21st century language and communication skill. The seal of biliteracy acknowledges that there is mastery of 2 or more languages and that it's a valuable asset for both individuals and their communities. Also, this seal will provide recognition to English learners for the great value of developing English and maintaining their primary language.
So our student success planning, or SSP, is sort of like an advisor that our students take part in all 4 years while they're here at Watertown High School. They're with the same teacher all 4 years, or their SSP advisor or teacher. And in there they do a lot of great stuff. 9th graders, they talk a lot about transitioning to the high school, things that they can utilize to make the adjustment easier for them. So they might start, with a letter to a future self, some goal setting for the school year, decision-making activities. And as you move on through your sophomore, junior, senior year, you begin looking at college and career and trades and things of that nature. And it all ends senior year when students work on their capstone proposal and their preparation. So that is with that one capstone credit that you saw, that was in our graduation requirements. So students receive 1 credit. It's upwards of 60 hours of research for the students, and then they present to their peers beginning end of April during May, and then students are awarded their capstone credit.
So as that's related to the program of studies, within the program of studies, we expanded the definition of SSP, or student success planning, slightly. So our thinking around this is, how do we take the capstone and back it up a little bit into the earlier grades, so the capstone isn't just a standalone project. So the way that we've written it in the program of studies is that students will demonstrate evidence of learning related to our vision of a graduate, beginning with the incoming 9th grade class, and then eventually progressing towards their senior capstone. So we're at the very, very beginning of conceptualizing this. But for example, there could be a digital portfolio that started in 9th grade, where, let's say, students pick 2 of the areas, knowledge, characteristics, or skills for the vision of the graduate, and they provide evidence or an artifact of that. So for example, how in grade 9 did you demonstrate flexibility, and how did you demonstrate curiosity? And then students drop that into their digital portfolio, and it kind of follows forward until they get to their capstone. So that's really just informational in terms of how we want to continue to use SSP, not only for the lessons like letter to self or decision making, but also taking a look at how do we better align the capstone with earlier years work.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Dr. Parlow, can you talk a little bit on the SSP? How are students going to be evaluated on some of these items? You know, I see letter to future self, right? That's so broad. You know, how are they evaluated on something that is pretty subjective? You know, and going through some of these items where all of these I think are really important to help, you know, our students prepare for the future. What kind of, you know, what are we holding them against, you know, to evaluate and stuff?
So in every case in SSP, there are specific lessons that the SSP coordinators create. So it's not just the person comes in and says, okay, today kids, we're gonna write a letter to your future self, just have at it. So there are very specific steps that students have to follow, and very specific criteria for this is what the letter must contain. Paragraph 1 must be introduction to yourself. Paragraph 2 must be your most important goal. Paragraph 3 must be, so because it is specific in the way the assignment is created, then it allows for some standardization across the school, or across the grade level, because they're by grade level.
Got it, thank you.
Yep. Well, I can say last slide says thank you for your continuing support. And so we do appreciate the board support as we continue to build our programming and consider new ways to engage kids in our school. So thank you very much, everyone, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I have, it's not in the program of studies, but it is also not specific to Watertown High School.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is a Mrs. Vecchity or Dr. Villanueva. But the last date I saw was October 2020. The State Department of Education was talking about a firearm safety guide and incorporating that type of education into our schools, elementary, high school. And I was just wondering if anybody has any thoughts on when that might be coming, because that's such a unique area. That's going to play a role on budget and stuff.
Correct. So the last time we spoke about the firearm safety curriculum, it was something that went up to our All Hazards Committee. And as the administrative team, as well as the All Hazards team, which includes the fire department as well as the PD, looked through it, there were kind of natural opportunities to talk about it, kind of like a dare visit into classrooms, as opposed to having an in-house curriculum. So we were looking to our armed security officers, as well as potentially our SROs, who would be able to come in and visit some of our younger classrooms to just talk about safety in general, and then would also kind of mold in that firearm safety, as opposed to having a full-fledged firearm curriculum altogether.
Okay.
That probably won't happen until later on this year.
Okay.
But it was, they had some good nuggets in there, just good common sense nuggets inside that curricular piece.
Almost like a workshop type thing.
Exactly.
So it's not, you know, and this is where I was kind of confused where this came from, the State Department of Education, but it sounds like there isn't, you know, a fully baked curriculum that, you know, they're kind of saying, hey, you need to do this, go figure it out.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yes, but they had some very good bullets in there, like that's.
Well, we got some of the right gentlemen in the room.
Yes,
So
exactly.
our people call your people.
Right.
Any questions? Through the, Ms. Hoskin?
I just have a question in terms of the new course offerings and how course selection kind of aligns with the budget process. I know that students need to begin to choose courses
Yes.
long before we know
Yes.
that we have the staff available. Can you just speak a little bit to how that is worked through?
So So, I'll speak to the African American Latino class
Cross your
first,
fingers.
because that is legislatively mandated. That will run. Now, if there are only 2 students who sign up, then it doesn't run. You have to offer it, but if you have too few students, you don't have to run it. But certainly we'll run that, if we have enough students sign up for it because of the legislative mandate. Something like personal interest projects, if there's a reduction to a line at the high school and we're not able to get that computer program, that kind of takes that course off the table. But generally speaking, what we've presented tonight, we can run with, other than being able to expand our offerings. So this is the basic of what we're able to do, still being down that 4.2 FTE over the last 5 years. So we can run these, but sometimes it means we have to sacrifice other things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Farasa?
This is, through the chair, thank you. Dr. Perrello, this is more of a comment. It is very heartening to see all the unified course offerings. It really is amazing to see that. And my comment is that what I've noticed about the students in Watertown, especially the high school students, and things I do outside of the board, they are amazing volunteers, and I see them go above and beyond to work with special needs children. And it's really heartening to see this because it all intertwines with what I see in my experience working with the students at Watertown High School. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. So we forgot to say earlier on, we are seeking to be and striving to be a national unified champion school. And that is given through the Special Olympics. And so part of what you have to do for that is increase your course offerings. And we have so many students who are interested in taking those unified offerings that it was a natural fit, yes. So, it also aligns with our thinking about inclusion and empathy in schools.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Through the chair.
No.
I just want to follow up and say, those are things we love to hear, right? Those types of goals that you're working towards. So don't be afraid to share those things. You know, even if you have something else, say, hey, here's something that we're working on. Because that's exciting stuff that you're trying to achieve such a high standard in that area. So that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I like the slide about the National Merit Finalists too, so.
That too, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other board
Thank
members?
you all.
No? Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. Dr. Parlato. Oh, I'm looking at you. Dr.
Oh.
Villanueva.
Yes.
It's all you now.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to the next
Proposed
presentation
budget.
then. Thank you. So this one's not quite streaming as of yet, and I'll just give another moment to get that up on the screen. Thank you for everyone's patience just as we move through with some of the tech difficulties this evening.
They don't see it yet. It's up.
All right.
They see it.
Great, okay. And Mr. Dalton, if you wouldn't mind just pinning your screen there. Oh. Thank you. So see how it's down there?
What's
So
it?
See
Oh,
how
pin it.
Yes, so pin that, so, okay. Okay, we'll stick with that for now. Okay, great. So, good evening, Board of Education, parents, community, and faculty and administrators. I'm happy to present this evening the superintendent's proposed budget for 2022-2023, also known as FY23. Board of Education members, once again, thank you to all of our new and returning members just for your continuous support and ultimately making the decisions that provide the conditions for our district to move forward in improving teaching and learning for all students. Also, in addition, thank you to our entire administrative team, many of you sitting in the audience tonight, for your day in and day out focus on just making our buildings the best possible places for our children to ultimately engage in learning. I also would like to draw our attention, our BOE's attention, to the green binders. And this is something that you now have the next couple of weeks to go through. You purposefully handed out this evening, but I want to give a big shout out to Ms. Kashuba, our new business manager, as well as Ms. Fekete, Ms. Chauvel, all of our cabinet members who ultimately created our budget book this year for the very first time ever for our district, so that you have a full overview of all of our budget lines. As mentioned in previous meetings, we are trying to increase transparency and think of innovative ways in which we can ultimately provide our students the best education. And two major important priorities is ultimately to look at where every single one of our dollars are going, but also to stay accountable to what our goals are and to what our priorities are, because we are ultimately here to serve our students and our families. Like every year, the budget is presented in multiple forums for varying audiences. And so this year, we kick off on Valentine's Day, and as you can see, the schedule outlined here, we move through ultimately the months of March and April with additional discussions and presentations of each iteration, and I mention iteration because there's usually adjustments to the budget as we move forward. The budget process is one that is successful because it is collaborative. It requires the input from our administrative team as well as feedback from parents over the year, students, and also the wider community. And it ultimately highlights the areas where we are dedicating our fiscal resources and where we are choosing to dedicate our fiscal resources. The Watertown Public Schools follows a very strict zero-based budgeting process where basically anything and everything that is part of the overall budget needs to be justified and carefully vetted. Ms. Kashuba certainly knows a lot about that. And so we also look at the historical trends, and we also make predictions on various data sets. Oftentimes we'll look at class size, enrollment data, past budget history, how we compare with other schools in our district reference group, and that'll come up later on this evening. Last year, I used the phrase fortifying the foundation. It is still very true this year because it takes more than just a year to fortify a foundation. And ultimately, year over year, we are going to continue to ensure that whether we're trying to increase our teaching and learning resources and practices, our fiscal practices, or how we set our goals, whatever it is, we need to know that we're aligned. We need to know that we are challenging ourselves to be innovative in ways and creative, and then also to be very authentic, which I also sometimes say just be very real or as real as possible. So that we can ultimately make step-by-step gains, because small wins will get us to the finish line. Big strides don't always happen, and sometimes they can't be afforded, and so little baby steps to get us to where we're going to is very important. And all of this is, of course, in an effort to improve our student experience. Below, you'll see in blue the words programmatic growth. And for a school district, really, whether you're fortifying a foundation, you're trying to be innovative, or whatever it may be, it's all about growing your programs, because that is the 100% touch point for our students. Our budget priorities are always around achieving academic excellence for our students, growing our students socially and emotionally, making sure that we're cultivating the mental and well-being and physical awareness of our students, and of course, building the knowledge, characteristics, and skills outlined in our vision of a graduate.
I'm not sure I'm following. The slides aren't moving, or are you still having that?
Okay. So I don't think the slides are moving with our screen. There we go. Why don't we keep them in that state, and then we can just kind of move it through that way, I suppose.
Yeah, it's on
It's on there? Okay, great. So we're just talking about those priorities and goals, also anchored in our Board of Education goals. Anytime we put a budget together, we are ultimately looking to mitigate potential risks, making sure that we can have continuity in our programs, and then of course growing our programs as well. Returns on investment are very, very important. And I know that sounds super businessy, but ultimately we are spending money. And so when we spend money, the question is, what are we getting a return on our investment? In FY22, we had this wonderful gift of ARP ESSER funding, which allowed our budget to go above and beyond what we typically would in any year. Very simply, you can see that with the additional monies from the ARP ESSER funds, we were able to begin our first phase of upgrading our Wi-Fi, which can be very costly. We're continuing to phase in for the next phase. We also were able to upgrade our firewall security. We had 1,400 replacement student Chromebooks. We were a district that was not one-to-one, and we went one-to-one overnight when the COVID hit. And so now that we are a couple years in, we need to start to age out unusable or older devices. So 1,400 replacement student Chromebooks were able to ordered in. We have the replacement of the Swiftfield fencing, one shot. Many years we were waiting for that, and here it is. We also were able to, it's going to start in March, but the creation of an adult education manufacturing evening course for certification. That is in partnership with Naugatuck Valley Community College as well as the Northwest Regional Investment Board. We were able to purchase phase one kind of implementation of an English language learner curriculum. So those are just hard resources in our hands for our teachers. We were able to expand the special education program up at the high school. It was the first year, so we're learning from it, and we know now where we can continue to add to that program to make it even better. We were able to expand world languages down in the middle school to not just 8th grade, but also in 7th grade as well. In addition, math resources were implemented, and we were able to bring in increased mental and health personnel support in the district. So with that extra funding, we were able to do quite a bit, and that's an immediate return on our investment. So here's the big number. Yes, Mr. Makowski.
Through the chair. Dr. Villanueva, so number 11 really sticks out at me because we're seeing, the regular increase in the needs. Sorry, I was looking at this. So increased mental health, personnel, and support. As you outlined, we were able to do that because of these ARP ESSER funds, but we know those are short-lived. So can you talk a little bit about, is the increased mental health, personnel, and support sustainable without the ARP ESSER?
At this point in time, we only posted for temporary positions, and so they would be sunsetting at the end of this year.
Okay. So the reason I bring that up is it's an important point that as, and our building administrators will tell you day in and day out, we're seeing an ongoing increase in the needs of our students. And so, us as a board now have to figure out how to pay for sustaining these services. So it's a big challenge.
Absolutely. So this year, to that point, Mr. Makowski, I am proposing on behalf of the Watertown Public Schools a total budget of $50,546,587, which is a total increase of $2,456,720, or a 5.11% increase. This is a carefully crafted number, and I'm going to walk you through on the next few slides what is entailed here and the process in which we move through. So first, it is very important to know that our largest expenditures are on salaries and benefits. That makes up 77.9% of the overall budget. We are in the business of serving children and families, and so it's no surprise that our greatest asset and our greatest resource are our people. We have 6 bargaining units: nurses, paraeducators, secretaries, custodians, cafeteria IT staff, teachers, administrators. And then after that, our next largest amount of financial resources goes to providing the services needed to support our special education population. In the next few slides, and I keep saying the next slides, but in the next few slides, I'm going to go a little more in depth around our special education costs and how they're growing. But for the time being, based on this image, just under about 10% of our overall budget for this year is dedicated to special education, but there's more to come on that. After that, transportation for all students takes approximately 3.3% of the overall budget. Then utilities and maintenance, which ultimately keeps the lights on, provides heat, maintains our buildings, make sure our facilities are safe for our children, is a total of 4.3% of the overall budget. Once that is all taken care of, then everything else, athletics, supplies and materials, equipment, for all 5.5 of our schools, is 4.7% of the overall budget. So now diving a little deeper into our special education costs. The colors are a little bit off here, but the blue line up to the red line, that area is a shaded red, and the below was actually purple, but it's coming out pink, so it all kind of molds in together. So at the start of the presentation, I mentioned that part of creating a fiscally responsible budget means to look at past history, trends, and patterns to help us accurately budget. This is one very important data trend that I want to bring to the attention of our WPS Board of Education as well as our community. Each year, our school district ultimately puts forth a budget increase to reflect the needs of our student population. And each year, we often experience additional cuts to the proposed budget, ultimately, in an effort to consider the larger kind of impact a school budget can have on a community or a municipality. Now, when this happens, the school budget is ultimately kept as low as possible so that the increase doesn't become detrimental to an overall system or to community. At the same time, however, there are statutorily required expenditures that impact our school district. And those required costs in this particular graph is special education costs. Now, over the past 5 to 6 years, the Watertown Public Schools special education prevalence rate has been steadily rising, and it's been in line with the state's overall increase, but in general, it's been rising. So it has never really dipped down, it just continues to go up. But what has also notably been happening across the state and in other districts, Watertown included, is that the quicker rise in special education is ultimately moving faster than the rise in which our budgets are increasing. So with that, I'll give you the visual, all boats rise with the tide. It's an important visual because the costs of all 7 of our major categories, salaries, benefits, transportation, special education, all of them increase year to year. However, when we try to maintain the lowest possible, and I'm going to throw a technical term out there, minimum budget requirement, ultimately the budget increase each year, when we try to keep that as low as possible, but another rate is going higher, it is very difficult to try to cover that gap in the middle, because the only way to really cover that gap in the middle is to pare down on the other departments within your 7 major categories. So for this particular area here, you can see that the special education prevalence rate continues to rise fairly rapidly, but the minimum budget requirement stays low. So it's almost like the one boat on the blue line is becoming anchored to the sea floor. And as the tide continues to rise, essentially the tide will overtake the boat. Or the boat on the blue line won't be able to take advantage of the tide. So I bring that to light here because an annual budget is one thing, but thinking about future budgets is also very important, and the health of each year's budget is going to impact the following year's budget. So with this, I just wanted to bring some actual numbers to you. In 2020, 2021, our special education costs were in the range of about just under $5 million. Moving to 2021, 2022, we had moved from our overall budget allocating 10% to special education, moving up 3% to 13% of our overall budget being allocated to special education costs. So we moved from about just under 5 million to a little over 6 million in 1 year. We needed to put money into special education because for so many years, that bucket was not being filled to enough. This year, moving from this year to next year, we are looking at another increase of the overall budget increasing up to about 14.35% dedicated to just special education. That's moving our special education costs up to about a little more than $7 million. We technically are going to find other ways, which you'll see here, on how to cut costs in other areas to make that happen. However, when we do that, it gets severe, and it's been happening year over year, and that's why I bring this up. So you can see the budget increases on the bottom and the dollar amounts, and then the special education prevalence rate above the top moving upwards. You can see that the gap widens, and again, you can picture the red chart. So again, I've said this over and over again, but we've enforced strict cost-cutting measures to close this gap year over year. Freezing a budget is not atypical of our district. Underfunding other departmental areas is also not atypical. Last year we had a number of layoffs. Not purchasing certain items for many, many years is also something that can happen as well to try to make things work within range. So I just wanted to paint that picture before I move on to talk more about why our increase is what I'm proposing.
Through the chair. So if I may expand on that just a little bit, Dr. Villanueva, for I know there's a lot of familiar faces here with us tonight and here remotely. And you've probably heard this before, but when we set a budget, that's our budget, right? We need to stay within that number. And so as our special education costs increase, the money has to come from somewhere else, right? So all the way down to papers, pens, staples, right, crayons, right? The stuff that our students use day in and day out, they actually get cut back, right? So just to put things into perspective, that when we talk about we don't want to impact these things that touch our students, that's exactly what we're doing, right? When we don't properly fund on what we think is going to happen, we know special education. And if anybody's following the news, and I said it earlier, the needs of students are increasing. The mental health requirements, the extra time, the resources, all of it's increasing. And it costs money. And so, I know Dr. Villanueva has a lot more to go, but, I just want to thank her for all that her team is doing to drill down into what do we need? Not what do we want, but what do we need to continue.
You got it. And I know it seems very dire, so there's happier things coming
No,
very
I know,
soon.
but it's reality.
Yes. So a technical term, a minimum budget requirement, also known as the MBR. The MBR is ultimately a statutory safety measure for public schools and for public school districts. It basically says that a school district or a municipality can't budget less for education than it did the previous year. You can come in flat, you can come in a little bit above, but you can't go less unless there's something drastically happening in your district that would require you to come in less. What this does, and I call it the safety measure, is it makes sure, knowing that your contractual obligations are going to increase each year, that utilities and maintenance typically have those kind of increases as well, that you're in a place where you can address the needs of your school district. Now, with a more accurately funded MBR, the school district will actually have an opportunity to provide the services necessary. So what's been happening ultimately in this historical trend is that our needs have been bumping up against the MBR, and it's trying to naturally force the MBR to go up. Now, those are scary words because nobody wants their MBR to go up because that does impact. But when it's happening over time, so many times, at some point there has to be some give to it. One of the good things is that funding education isn't an immediate return on investment for a community, because a strong school system, and I'm just reading the words right off the screen here, is often what attracts economic development and promise on a larger economic scale in a municipality like Watertown. People move in when there's a great school system. Real estate starts to go up when there's a great school system. We get more people. So it is an opportunity to make an investment to see that return on investment as well. And so here are the good things. With our budget proposed, we are going to focus on expanding our special education program by expanding our life skills classroom up at the high school, as well as putting in a sensory room. And this also, in turn, allows our students to graduate from the middle school to come up into the high school, and without us having to outplace students, we can keep our students and provide their services in district, which is really important for us because we also want to keep our kids here. Also, our student and faculty instructional supplies and resources, I did cut them very hard last year, and I say I because I asked all of them to give stuff up last year. That this year, really, we made it a priority to fund their lines the way our administrative team requested them. We weren't able to give them all the personnel requests they asked for, but at least the lines in which they asked for, we were able to say, let's keep those whole. So that's a good thing. We were able to, and this is still a tentative confirmation, but we think it's going to go through, security cameras through an SCG 5 grant that was written have been tentatively approved at Polk and John Trumbull, and so we would pay the local share of that cost, and then the state would pay their state share. So that's very exciting because that is something that needs to be renewed. In addition, our summer enrichment programming and tutoring, certainly Ms. Feckerty knows how important our summer school is for our students just to bridge that gap in those summer months. And again, we'll partner up potentially with somebody who provides active engagement as well, so maybe somebody like Parks and Rec again or the YMCA. And then, of course, implementation of the phase 1 of our literacy curriculum and resources. You heard in our central office budget priorities presentation that we're 10 years overdue. So boy, do we need to get started on that. So those are really where we're going to focus our investments in this coming year. And of course, we're always looking at enrollment and class size. This is the exact same slide and picture that I used in last year's presentation because we know that class sizes ultimately that are reasonable make it a better educational experience for our students. We still receive state and federal funds, and so federal grants we are anticipating just a little over $1 million, and in state grants we're anticipating a little over $13 million. So in total, about $14,299,000 goes straight to this budget. It goes straight to our budget, and it's used well. We are taking on some budget assumptions and assuming risk in some of our areas that have some volatility. So in areas like health insurance, workers' compensation, and liability insurance, as well as in some of our special education areas. We are going into negotiations with one of our collective bargaining units. So these are all things that we'll assume risk on, but we don't have a hard number as of yet of whether we'd be coming in over or under. We did our due diligence, we looked for every penny, and we continue to cut a little bit more, and we made some additional reductions. You can see from personnel, benefits, all the way down to supplies and maintenance, just to give that extra little bit of reduction so that we can come in at a reasonable percentage. I do also want to just kind of finish out on what a DIRG is. So our school districts in the state of Connecticut are categorized by district reference groups. We are part of DIRG D. Those are school districts that are in DIRG D. You can see from the names that some of them are very different from our school district, either in size, the number of schools, urban, suburban. But what makes us all belong to the same group is that we have a very similar socioeconomic situation, and our median household income is relatively the same. Now, I tried my best to find school districts of our DIRG that are similar to us in the number of schools we have, and wanted to do a comparison of what their approved budgets were last year and what their proposed budgets are this year. If the information was available, I've put it into the chart here. And thank you again to the cabinet team for helping us find this information. We have 5 schools. Rocky Hill, Berlin, Bethel, New Milford also have 5 schools. Newington is also in DIRG D, but they have 7, fairly similar. And I threw Middlebury, Pomperog in there because even though they're in DIRG B, they are our neighbors and they're not too far from us. You can see that out of these districts, we still have the lowest approved budget of 2021-2022. Even if it was just a couple of $100,000 more, the other districts had a little bit more. although I'm asking for a 5.11% increase this year in the proposed budget, we are still lowest in the dollar category in comparison to those Dirt D schools. Now, of course, when you go up to the school districts that have 7 schools, Newington and Middlebury, now we're just right out of the water on that one because they're up in the $70 and $80 million range. But the point of this chart was to ultimately say, even if 5.11 seems like it's a very big increase in number, we are still lowest in comparison to these other districts. So again, there's the number, total proposed budget of $50,546,587 for a total increase of $2,456,720 and 5.11%. Thank you very much. I know that was a big mouthful. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll have the green binder for you guys to comb through. And when we come back together on the 28th, anything that I can do in between to answer any questions, happy to do so.
Before I open up to the board, I know that percentage increase seems a little bit higher than we've had in the past, but because we haven't had such a big increase in the past and so many cuts in the past, that's where we are now, and we need all these things. And our administrators too, every year come in low because they know. And our kids are suffering because of that. So we really have to do our best to get this passed. And I'm looking forward to talking with you in the town council.
Yes.
And having that, and the rest of the board as well, and having that communication and that conversation on why this is important. Anybody else from the board like to ask a question or comment at this time? No. Well, you have some time to look over, and at our next meeting too, we'll be open for questions if anybody's interested.
And right after today's meeting, I will press go on the website. So whenever anybody goes to our main district website, right in the gallery box, it'll say FY23 budget documents. So if anybody from the community asks you for any detail, you can send them right there and they'll have all the same documents you have as well.
Okay. Seeing none, we're on to letter K, public participation. In accordance with policy 9050, public participants must state their name and address for the record and limit statements to 3 minutes. The board encourages speakers not to express any defamatory comments about Watertown Board of Education, personnel, or any other persons associated with the Watertown Public School System. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to address the board this evening?
Yes, I do.
Just 1 second, we're just doing in person. Is there anybody in person who would like to address the board tonight? If you would come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Name's Joe Joyce, 137 Porter Street. As far as your budget here, how much of that is the money from the state and the tribes to take away the Native American mascot from town?
May I respond? Oh, okay. So actually, I think the Massapequa fund, I'm not getting the name right, goes to the municipality. And I believe Watertown is eligible for, it doesn't come to the Board of Education for just under $12,000.
So is that 12,000 worth, was that worth taking the Indian name from the town that we had for 30 years, 40 years, for a measly $12,000, taking away the town's history? Or is it caving to the money versus the history of the town that many of us in this room graduated to? My diploma says Indians, my brothers, my sisters. You know, is it worth losing it? Was it worth losing it for $12,000? I don't think so. Put the history over money. You know, it's all money. You got, you know, to the town, schools, everything. History, money, come on. I prefer history. It's 12 grand. What's that gonna get you? Nothing.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to address the board?
Victoria Perillo, Glenport. A lot has happened in Connecticut in regards to masking mandates and parents' choice since Governor Lamont's February 7th announcement. We have seen numerous districts, such as Darien, Stratford, Bristol, show true leadership and send letters to Governor Lamont on behalf of their students and communities, requesting greater autonomy and flexibility regarding mitigating strategies, including mask wearing, to be granted to local school districts and ultimately to respect parents' choice. New Canaan, Woodstock, and Naugatuck sent letters to their communities supporting parent choice for masking. Sadly, we did not see Watertown Board of Ed actively support their community and advocate for our children. On Friday, February 11th, Dr. V's weekly email talked about looking to State Department of Education and DPH for guidance. However, our trust in DPH and State Department of Education has been and continues to get eroded. Over the last 2 years, we have seen these departments' decisions have been based on politics and fear, not on the basis of science and data. We, the parents, urge you to fight for our children and give back our parental rights to make educated risk assessment decisions for our kids and masking in schools. When our children are still forced to mask in school, be it until February 28th, or if the case spikes again, it's because our state and local leaders don't want to admit that their COVID responses were worse than the disease and double down on bad decisions. COVID policies are no longer about health, but what the current public opinion polls show. The science hasn't changed, but politicians' chances at the midterms have. What should be guiding our actions throughout this endemic is achieving the maximum protection of public health with the minimum intrusion in people's everyday lives. We should not be using the case numbers at all when making decisions about restrictions. Hospitalizations and death rates are much better metrics than the number of positive cases. We should also be focusing on how little risk there is to kids in general spreading of the virus in the school system. All we need to look at is to determine that the COVID response the last 2 years has been a great failure is Ms. Becky's presentation from last Board of Education meeting, showing how poorly our kids are performing due to all of these restrictions. These restrictions are failing our kids. I would encourage everyone to listen to the parents' testimonies during the information hearing the legislature had held on the continuation of emergency declarations and limited executive order last Tuesday, February 8th. It's available on YouTube. Even though not all school districts have the same communities, and districts do not always come 100% consensus on topics, these testimonies were overwhelmingly in support of parental choice, regardless of district, gender, or race, or even political preferences. Our system of laws and justice in Connecticut and throughout the United States relies on a recognition that individual citizens are the highest authority when it comes to their personal choices, including but not limited to decisions affecting their health. Our freedom comes from God, not from government. This freedom is part of the foundation of our republic. Mask choice is not anti-mask. Parents should have a choice to double mask or not to mask their kids at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience wish to address the board this evening? Anybody from the virtual audience wish to address the board? Please unmute yourself and state your name and address.
Genesis Alfonso, Lovely Drive. Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Villanueva. I would like to start off with a list of towns that have opted out for mass choice. Manchester, Ellington, Southington, Naugatuck, West Hartford, Darien, Vernon, Oxford, Seymour, Northford, Weston, North Stonington, Glastonbury, Meriden, East Lyme, Woodstock, Somers, Durham, and many more that haven't been updated yet.
Yes.
You have the power to change this. It's just a matter of when you will stand up and do it. There is a blatant disrespect to a majority of this town and parents who want the right to choose whether to mask or unmask their kids. Dr. Manisha Juntani, a Yale clinician, scientist, top expert in Connecticut for public health, has failed to provide a framework for when to be masked and when not to be masked. So what are we waiting for? She no longer believes there is a pandemic because she lifted the mandate universally. Along with the governor, our local health director and superintendent are in control. If you are voting to keep the masks, you are superseding the most qualified person said it's not necessary, how does Department of Health say it's not necessary, but our superintendent, who is not in that profession, can supersede what the commissioner says? There is no ordinance for this type of local authority. Should there be a mandate for kids in our town, but not in other schools of other towns? They aren't alarming to Jutani, so why are they alarming to Watertown? Are the cases high? What are you going by to decide to mask the kids? What are your parameters? Cheshire has stated if there are 2 out of 3 criteria met, then they will unmask the kids. What do we even need a town manager for? Giving superintendent the authority over masks in schools at any moment can lead to closings and lockdown. Because someone will be using arbitrary numbers. Last Tuesday, Dr. Jutani publicly announced that the Department of Health will not continue universal mask mandate and leave it to the districts. What makes Watertown so unique and so at risk that we need to infringe the rights of our residents? Even West Hartford, a strong liberal town, is going mask choice. This isn't a knee-jerk reaction anymore because we are no longer in an emergency. Remember when we couldn't even get a haircut? Everything is open now because nobody in those industries require a mask, only our schools. The children are the least affected population. It's time to back down from the mandates. That is where we have arrived. We are no longer in a pandemic where we have to mask. Dr. Jutani has access to all the data. One senator this afternoon had said they didn't track hospitalizations of vaccinated children. We don't even compile specific data to evaluate the situation we are in. This begs the question, why? If it's for the safety of the children. There is an issue of enforcement as well if the student decides to not put on a mask. The student has the right now to mention that the state is not requiring it. I look around when I go in town, and anecdotally, the kids are not masked. But they are being made to at school. It's all theater, and they hang out with their friends, and it's just all for show when they come to school. Are we teaching these children to be hypocrites?
Thank you, Ms. Alfonso. I apologize, but the 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Okay.
Before we go on, I just want to clarify what we stated earlier. As of February 28th, just like those other districts that you mentioned, if the mask mandate is lifted, we will also be optional. If as of February 28th it is not lifted, we will reconvene and discuss it further. But as of right now, we are with those other districts.
Well, you haven't made a statement. It's not in writing.
We did
Just
tonight.
said
Thank
it.
you. Is there anybody else from the virtual audience that would like to speak this evening? Please unmute yourself and state your name.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. My name is Eric Wagner. First of all, I would like to thank you for your time and effort in tonight's meeting. I would like to just discuss what you said about talking to our children about firearms in schools. My family is heavily military trained, okay? There should be no reason anybody should speak to my child about firearms. That should be left to the parents. That should be a parent's decision, number one. Number two, there's been so much millions of dollars in ESSER funding or federal funding for ventilation. I have not heard once in the past year about any ventilation in schools. I would love some transparency on that. I thought this money was allocated in different areas for ventilation. Am I right? Maybe not. Number three, if I look back, the special ed funding has gone up dramatically over the past couple of years. Don't you see that it's because of these math? How is a preschooler going to learn how to speak if they cannot see the teacher's mouth move or the speech pathologist? This is why special ed services have gone up in the past years because of the math. This is not fair, excuse me, to our children anymore. Hopefully February 28th will be good I thank you for your time, and I would love to hear in my email about ventilation. It's been allocated for ventilation in schools with all this federal funding. I have not heard once in the past year about money going for ventilation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the virtual audience who would like to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications. Secretary, Mrs. Hosking.
Yes, Madam Chair. The Board of Ed received the following letters via email. A letter from Cindy Eastman on February 8th, 2022 for the purpose of her resignation from the Board of Education. A letter from Genesis Alfonso on February 7th, 2022 in regards to medical mandates. A letter from Jacqueline Lawler on February 7th, 2022 in regards to unmasking our students. And a letter from Richard Avaletta, Robert Palmer, and Joseph Romano on January 25th, 2022 in regards to keeping the Indian logo. All Board of Education members received the letters via email.
Thank you, Ms. Hosking. Now, item M, committee reports, curriculum and instruction. Ms. Hosking, back to you.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Policy and labor, Mr. Malaguti.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Budget and finance, Mr. Markowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Dr. Villanueva and her team for the budget presentation this evening. Very important information on the state of the district and what's needed to continue to build on the foundation. We'll continue to meet through Budget and Finance Subcommittee, and Dr. Villanueva also in her presentation included the timeline of bringing the proposed budget to the board for a final vote and then to the town council.
Thank you. Facilities Operations Committee, Mr. Gonzalez.
No report this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Governance and Community Engagement, Ms. Fressa.
No report at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item N, action items to be approved by consent. We have a consideration of the approval of the proposed 2022-2023 program of studies for Watertown High School. Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the board approve the proposed program of studies for Watertown High School for the 2022-2023 school year as presented.
All in favor?
Is there a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Discussion? I'm a little, I just have some concerns about the wording on that, on the Latin American or Latinx. So maybe we could just look into that a little.
Sure,
We
yeah,
could still approve it maybe with just the.
Yep, I think the wording comes straight from the state, so why don't
Okay.
we, Dr. Parlato, why don't we look into it and then we can get back to
Yeah,
the board?
and that's fine. I mean, we could still approve it with that pending, I guess.
Mhm.
Can we do that?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
revise it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine, and we could look at it,
Revise
okay.
it.
Everything else
Thank
is,
you.
I'm just
Yep.
have,
No,
would like to
revise
look
it.
into it a little
Make
bit
it
more.
Yep.
Okay.
Didactic clarification is to Latino,
Okay.
yes?
Well, let's look what our, yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Let me read
Yeah.
the thing one more time and then.
Okay, so should we wait, or is it okay to pass
I
it?
think you
and-
guys are okay to approve tonight and then.
Everything else is okay, correct? Anybody else have any discussion or questions? No, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Consideration of approval of an out-of-state field trip to Springfield, Massachusetts. Board members received the documentation in your packets. Miss Beers, a teacher at Swift Middle School, requests an out-of-state field trip to Springfield, Massachusetts from April 13th through April 16th, 2022 for approximately 15 Watertown High School students. Students will participate in the first robotics competition along with teams from New England. It's so nice to have a field trip. We haven't had field trips in so long. Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. To start, I had a chance to review the itinerary, and it's just pretty cool to see the action-packed day that the kids have in store, beginning at 6 a.m., going to 10 p.m. and I like it, the structure of it there, so good for them. Good luck, congratulations. So I move that the board approve of a field trip for 15 Watertown High School students to Springfield, Massachusetts on April 13th through April 16th, 2022, for the purpose of the first robotics competition as presented.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to number 3, consideration of the approval for the acceptance of a gift. Members of the Watertown Rotary Club who are here this evening purchased Quantum soft body armor vests for our 3 Watertown school security offers in the amount of $1,971. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the board accept the donation from the Watertown Rotary Club for soft body armor vests for the 3 Watertown school security officers, and a letter of appreciation be sent to the donor.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to future agenda items and board member comments. Do any board members have any comments or future board agenda items that they would like to mention this evening? Mr. Makowski?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's actually kind of tongue-in-cheek, but since it was funny that we had the approval for the robotics team to go, and anybody watch BattleBots? I totally think our robotics team should get involved in BattleBots because it's a pretty cool thing. Sorry.
That's
Just
all
kinda
right.
like
I think you should push
Make a
that
donation.
forward. Make a motion. Yeah, make a donation. Okay. Now on to P, adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
John, second.
Motion carries. We are
All those
adjourned.
in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:56.